Hello, my name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk about astrology, in particular Vedic astrology, but no topic is off the table. I just wanted to really talk for a few minutes about the next month or so because, and I will intersperse some techniques as I promised in the last class in this lecture, but next month looks to be particularly interesting, in addition to this month being very interesting, but not as interesting as this month. This month has largely been what I would call a play of shadows. And what I mean by that is we have Rahu and Ketu, which are essentially the north and south lunar nodes. Those are responsible for eclipses of the moon and the sun, respectively. Now, Rahu is particularly connected with panic, phobia, fear, anxiety. It eclipses the moon, so the moon is our stable mind or our perceptions of the world and how we experience the world. It's mother, so the first person we experience the world through is, in fact, our mother. Right? We share a body with her. We come out of her into the world, and that's mom. So basically, that's our emotional center. It's also our intellect to a very large degree. I like to differentiate it between other planets which govern intellect, like Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter, in the fact that the moon is going to be sort of like the capacity for learning, but also our common sense mind. So if the moon is strong, it doesn't mean other planets can't take up that capacity for learning. The first house lord can be strong and the person can have great capacity to learn. But if the moon is strong, it can sometimes give like tremendous flexibility to a person and tremendous mental acuity. Also popularity. The moon is a popular planet. It likes things. So getting back to Rahu, Rahu is essentially a representation of when the Earth passes between the sun and the moon, and you'll see this large red object in the sky. That's the moon, and it looks really beautiful and striking, and most astrologers don't think you should be outside while the moon is in eclipse. I actually enjoy it. I was born close to a moon Rahu conjunction, so I actually enjoy looking at the red moon. But a lot of people are really frightened of it. There's a lot of panic built up, and again, Rahu is a panic. It represents panic in a chart. It also represents, to a certain extent, disruption. And Ketu is Rahu's other half. It's responsible for eclipses of the sun, so it swallows up the sun, so it shuts off the light of the world. Anyone who's ever been in an eclipse knows it feels a little bit otherworldly. It feels very detached, very isolated, very remote. So this planet, Ketu, is always in direct opposition to Rahu. They have a legend about how the two were split. And that particular phenomenon has been, Rahu and Ketu have been in Gemini and Sagittarius in Vedic astrology since March of this year, March 23rd to be precise. If we use a measurement called the true nodes. There's another measurement called the mean nodes, which I don't like as much, but which traditional Indian astrologers use. And basically, this has created a great deal, and people know about these combinations for years to come because the universe, or at least the solar system, is fairly predictable. It's not really a big mystery the way the planets move to us. If we have asteroids or comets, those are sometimes unexpected. As a matter of fact, comets are referred to as Ketus because they're unknown objects, and they're supposed to be portents of disasters or catastrophes. That's not entirely true, but that's at least what books like Vara Mahira's Priya Sangita says, and there are many different types of Ketus or comets, and they all have different meanings and different, and they portend different things. Like some will portend the death of a leader, some will imply that there'll be droughts or famines, etc., those kinds of things. So this is going back into a very old book from maybe around 900 AD or so, 900 CE, excuse me. And that particular book is chock full of information. If you ever decide to study Indian astrology, I'd highly recommend it. It's really a fascinating book. But to get back to the point, Rahu and Ketu are considered to be inauspicious planets. They're considered to be difficult planets or difficult grahas. The technical term for planet is Caesar, Seizer, or graha in Sanskrit. And that means something that seizes our destiny or seizes our path. Concurrently with Rahu and Ketu being in Sagittarius and Gemini, or Gemini and Sagittarius, excuse me, respectively, Mars and Mercury are both in Gemini. Sun will enter Gemini within 3 days, and after about a week, Mars and Mercury will leave Gemini, and Venus will enter Gemini. So, and we'll have a solar eclipse on July 2nd, and that's supposed to be another difficult time for us, according to our friends. Now, this past week, actually, I'm talking to you on July 13th, tomorrow, July 14th, there will be an exact opposition of Saturn and Mars in the chart. Now, typically, these are considered the two most difficult planets in Indian astrology. Traditional Indian astrology doesn't use Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, although Uranus right now is, let me just check something out for you folks. And I can pull this up, and mainly because I don't use it all that much. And, all right, so let me see now. 1 second. This won't take long at all, I promise. It's all being done live, so no room for improvisation. All right. So Uranus is in Aries right now in Indian astrology, and Pluto is right next to Ketu. Now, the interesting thing of it is, and one of the things I find interesting is Pluto acts. The significations of Pluto are a lot like Ketu. And one of the reasons I don't use the outer planets when I look at predictions is because somewhere else in the chart I'll have either Rahu or Ketu doing the job of the outer planets. So I just feel it's kind of redundant. I've never seen something happening in a chart that I can't explain through the 9 classical planets. And there are also these little things called upagrahas, or little planets that show up there, calculated points in a Vedic astrology chart. So I'm not saying that Pluto will not have any effect on a person in an astrology chart, but they seem to be, like I said, just to me, as personally as an astrologer, they seem to be redundant. I seem to see the same things happening from Ketu, and I'm saying, well, okay, Ketu's doing this and Pluto's doing this, and they're doing almost identically the same thing. And so it just seems like not really a waste of energy, but kind of a needless redundancy to be saying that. And it may be some cosmic coincidence, but as I said, I've never seen a situation in which Ketu is causing something and Pluto or Rahu are not causing the same thing, and the same with Uranus and Neptune. Uranus and Neptune are more akin to um, Rahu and Neptune and Pluto are more akin to Ketu. So essentially, we have all these planets which actually cause events or cause significations. Now, one of the things that's been happening over the past month is we've had a lot of astrologers, and I said this in the last segment, a lot of astrologers predicting like dire events, corruption, and about the closest we've seen to anything like this happening is the unfortunate flooding disasters, which is definitely a K2 phenomenon happening in the Midwest. And recently, over the past few days, we've seen some protests in Hong Kong and Moscow. But these are limited area activities. And also, there's some problems in South America right now. I think not quite in Venezuela. It's another country close by. And now these also happen to be places where Saturn and Rahu lines are passing over, or Mars lines are passing over. So you can sort of like track these events if you have an astrocartography program and see where sensitive areas are. Like England's a sensitive area right now, especially around Scotland, and Norway is sensitive. And if you go all the way down to Australia and the area just to the north west of that is sensitive, so that's Hong Kong. And you'll see these lines passing through these areas where a lot of these events are actually occurring. So this is a fascinating use of a system of, essentially they're just like where the orbits of the planets intersect with the Earth. And it's something which is science. You know, it's not something that an astrologer made up. Somebody just figured out where the orbital lines and where the mid-heaven lines transition through the Earth. So these particular phenomena, you can actually localize certain things happening in a chart by looking at these astrocartography lines, and it's fascinating. But I think the one thing that I want to point out to people, especially today, is that we have signs like Gemini and Sagittarius. One's ruled by Mercury. Mercury rules Gemini, and Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. These are what are called mutable or changeable signs. So we have 2 disruptive planets, or 4 disruptive planets in that sign, in these signs. So Rahu's in Gemini, where it actually likes to be. It actually enjoys being in that sign. It feels like it's home, or it's exalted in that particular sign. And Ketu's in Sagittarius, where it likes to be as well. So usually, in one principal rule of Vedic astrology is a planet, even if it's a difficult planet, doesn't hurt its home sign. It doesn't hurt its exalted sign. So Rahu and Ketu are sort of like going through these planets. These signs. They're going through these signs. They're not really going to hurt anything. Mars will cause a lot of frustration. Saturn's aspecting Mars, that's a frustration building combination because Mars wants to move and Saturn wants to stay put. So you'll see some resistance. That's why we have the protests that are happening in Hong Kong and in Russia and in other places. And so those kinds of immovable activities, it'll force change for people. And over the past 3 days, in particular this past week, everybody's felt very tense. And that's mainly because of the moon's placement. So the moon has been in Virgo up until about 2 days ago. And everybody was feeling like, I got to do something, I got to move. And that's what the Mars-Saturn opposition always does. A person feels like they have to. I have it in my birth chart. I don't have an opposition, but I have a Saturn-Mars. So the person wants to move, and then all of a sudden they're held back. They can't go. It's not time yet. It's not time yet. It's not time yet. And they usually have to fight to make a change. Now, right now, if you fight to make a change, it'll be extremely difficult and probably not worth it. That's just passing along some advice from a person who's been in this field for a long time. If you want to make a change, let's say like a month from now, terrific. Rahu and Ketu will still be in Gemini and Sagittarius, but Mars and Mercury will be out of the sign. Venus will probably be out of the sign, so you're going to see a lot of tension in relationship matters over the next month or so, okay? Especially around July 2nd. And the main reason I'm focusing so strongly around July 2nd is mainly because of the eclipse. And what happens during the eclipses, from what I've seen, is that people feel very dissatisfied with their life in general. They tend to be very, very upset that life is not going as they want it to be, as they picture their dream life to be. And oftentimes they'll make decisions to make changes, disconnect from authority figures, quit jobs. I have seen several people over the past few months who have quit jobs or want to get out of jobs, quit relationships, want to get out of relationships. These are all kind of normal phenomena. It's really better to wait. And this is a long wait, but it's usually better to wait until Rahu and Ketu have passed to the next sign that's from the one that's affecting you before you make any moves, because one of the things that Rahu does to a person or to an individual or to a country or to anybody is they make them feel like they can function better on their own, and they can also swell a person up to want more and want a lot when they're not ready for it. So they'll overestimate. Their reach will exceed their grasp, because Rahu wants everything. Rahu wants the world. It wants to be a star. It wants to be a millionaire. It wants to be the most glorious creation on the face of the earth. And that's fine. I'm not saying individuals shouldn't strive to be the best that they can be. But Rahu often makes a person go. So Rahu can actually be an important push to motivate individuals